Okay, let's dive in. Picture this. You're walking through a busy mall, maybe in Mumbai. You head into one of those big global sportswear stores.
Yeah, the ones with all the bright lights and familiar logos.
Exactly. You see the walls lined with sneakers, the latest kits, all that stuff, and you spot that specific pair you've been wanting. Maybe a limited edition you thought was long gone.
Right, there's that buzz, that feeling of finding something cool, something desirable.
Totally. Now imagine this twist. What if you went back tomorrow and the shelves looked, well, different?
Different how?
Like, what if those famous logos, the swoosh, the stripes, the cat, what if they just weren't there? Or, way fewer of them were.
Huh. Well, I feel pretty dramatic, like something big had shifted overnight.
It really would. And that possibility, that kind of scenario, is exactly what's been causing a bit of a stir lately. So this deep dive is all about figuring out what's happening in India with this big quality control push from the government.
Ah, the QCOs, quality control orders.
Precisely. And what it might mean for those huge global sportswear brands we all know. There were headlines, especially around, Juneteenth this year, talking about a potential exit.
Yeah, I saw those. Definitely grabbed attention. Made you wonder, what's really going on? Will I still be able to get my usual trainers?
That's what we're here to unpack. We've looked into it, gathered the info, and we want to get behind those, frankly, quite dramatic headlines. What are the facts? What are these new rules actually doing?
And importantly, what does it mean for you, the consumer? Maybe just wanting a new pair of running shoes or a jacket.
Exactly. Let's get to the bottom of it together.
Okay, so the core of this whole thing, it really stems from the Indian government deciding to tighten the screws on regulations for imported goods. They've rolled out these new quality control orders, QCOs.
Right, the QCOs. Let's break those down a bit. They seem central to everything.
They really are. These aren't just guidelines, they're mandatory. They're enforced by the Bureau of Indian Standards, the BIS. And what they say is imported stuff like footwear, clothing, accessories. So basically all the sportswear gear has to meet specific Indian standards for quality and safety before it can be sold.
So the government's essentially put up a gate saying, want to sell here, your products have to hit our quality mark first.
That's exactly it. You have to meet the standard to play in the market. The government's pretty clear on why they're doing it. Two main reasons, really.
Which are?
One, protect Indian consumers from dodgy products, stuff that falls apart too quickly, isn't safe, doesn't last. And two, they want to level the playing field for local manufacturers.
Ah, so helping Indian companies compete against imports that might be cheaper because they're lower quality?
Precisely. It sets a higher bar for everyone. And the immediate effect. Well, it's been a real challenge for the big global players. That buzz around Juneteenth, the speculation about Nike, Adidas, Puma maybe leaving, it's directly tied to the difficulty they're facing complying with these QCOs.
You said compliance isn't simple. What's the big hurdle? Why is it so tough?
Yeah, it's definitely not just a case of ticking a box. Sure, product testing is part of it. But the real kicker, the really complex part, is getting the factories certified.
Yeah.
The ones overseas where the gear is actually made.
The factories in, like, Vietnam or China.
Exactly. Vietnam, China, Bangladesh, Indonesia, wherever they source from. Each of those factories needs to be audited and approved by BIS officials from India.
Wow. Okay. That sounds like a huge logistical undertaking.
It is. It involves inspections, tons of paperwork, dealing with bureaucracy. People are calling it a maze. For brands with these massive, sprawling global supply chains, it adds serious layers of cost, time delays, and just, headaches.
Okay, so we get the what and the how of the QCOs. But why the big push now? Did this just come out of the blue?
Not entirely out of the blue, no. India's had this sort of underlying push for better quality and boosting local manufacturing for a while. You can kind of trace it back to things like the Make in India campaign.
Oh, right. That started back in 2014, didn't it?
Yeah. So the philosophy isn't brand new.
Yeah.
But what is new is the scale and the enforcement.
An expansion, then.
Exactly. By 2025, the BIS has massively expanded these mandatory QCOs. They cover like over 2,000 product categories now. It's not just footwear or textiles. It's a huge range.
So it's a really broad strategy.
Very broad. And the rule is crystal clear. Imported items must have that BIS certification mark. It's the proof they meet Indian standards. Safety, durability, performance, all that.
The BIS mark is the key.
It's the absolute key. And getting that key, like we said, hinges heavily on those factory audits abroad. BIS officials physically go and inspect these places.
And if a factory fails the audit?
Products made there, banned from import. Simple as that. And this isn't theoretical. We've seen it happen.
Really?
Yeah, remember, global brands actually faced an 18-month import ban on many of these goods. It only lifted in early 2025.
Ah, okay, that's crucial context.
It is. Imports only started again when the government began the process of actually certifying these overseas factories.
So that 18-month halt shows they're serious. And maybe explains why the exit rumors flared up again now, because even though the ban lifted, the process of getting certified is proving really tough.
You got it. The history of restriction was there. And beyond the government's stated goals, you have to wonder what else is driving this harder push. Part of it seems to be a direct response to complaints.
Complaints from consumers.
Yeah, apparently a noticeable rise in people complaining about poor quality imports.
Yeah.
Shoes falling apart, clothes losing shape after a few washes, that kind of thing.
We've all been there, right? Buy something expecting it to last, and it just disintegrates.
Exactly. And interestingly, this whole situation is creating a big opening for local Indian brands.
Big coup.
Companies like Shiv Naresh or Zeven, they're really stepping up. And they're not just alternatives. Often they're making gear designed specifically for India. Shiv Naresh is known for its tough Deshki Vardi jerseys made for dusty fields. Zeven focuses on climate-friendly stuff, and it's backed by Mahesh Bhupathi.
So they have that local insight.
They really do. They understand the conditions, the needs. So if the global giants stumble over these new rules, these local players are right there, ready to grab market share.
Which brings us squarely to the dilemma for Nike, Adidas, Puma, these huge global names. What do? Stay and pay the price of compliance? Or is it just too much hassle? Stay, pay, or run away?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question they're grappling with, and the challenges are definitely real. First off, cost. Compliance isn't cheap.
How expensive are we talking?
Well, getting BIS certification means paying for testing, potentially upgrading equipment, covering travel and accommodation for BIS auditors visiting factories worldwide. Maybe even changing materials if the current ones don't pass muster.
We saw some numbers on that, right? Like for a pair of sneakers?
Yeah, there was an example floating around. Say a pair of sneakers retails for around 10,000 beers. The compliance costs alone could potentially add another euro 5,000.
Oof. Taking it up to 15,000, that's a 50% jump.
Exactly, a huge increase. That suddenly makes the product unaffordable for a lot more people.
Yeah, a 50% price hike is tough to swallow, even if the promise is better quality down the line.
Right. Then there's the time factor. Getting factories audited and certified isn't quick. We're talking months.
And sportswear moves fast. New seasons, new drops.
Precisely. In fashion and sportswear, timing is everything. If you miss a key launch window because your factory isn't certified yet, that's lost sales, lost buzz. You lose ground to competitors, maybe those faster-moving local brands. Nike and Adidas rely on that constant stream of newness.
And then the logistics you mentioned earlier, just managing it all.
Yeah, imagine coordinating this across dozens, maybe hundreds of factories spread across the globe. Many of these production hubs, like Vietnam, are already dealing with other headaches, like high U.S. tariffs.
Right, so that's already making them think about where they manufacture.
Exactly. So now you layer BIS audits on top of that, managing different standards, potential backlogs, all while juggling global trade politics. This is a massive logistical puzzle.
Okay, it sounds genuinely difficult, costly, slow, complicated. So, back to those headlines. Are they really thinking of packing up and leaving India? Is an exodus actually possible?
This is where we need to pump the brakes on the panic. Yes, the challenges are serious, very serious. But a complete, total exit for these huge global players, based on everything we know, it just seems highly unlikely.
Why is so unlikely?
Well, think about their history and investment in India. Nike's been there since the early 2000s. Adidas, even longer. Adidas has, what, 600 or 700 stores? Nike had around 150 back in 2019.
That's a massive physical presence.
Huge. Decades of building brand loyalty, distribution networks, customer relationships, and a market of 1.4 billion people. You don't just walk away from that overnight.
It would be throwing away decades of work and investment.
Absolutely. Especially with India's demographics, young population, growing middle class. It's a key future market. Plus, these companies have hit rough patches in India before and stuck it out.
Like Nike's financial troubles a few years back.
Exactly. Nike had a big loss reported around 2014-15. What do? They restructured, closed some less profitable stores in 2016, streamlined things, but they stayed. They adapted.
So history suggests adaptation, not abandonment.
That seems the far more likely scenario. Not vanishing, but adjusting. Maybe they'll scale back certain product lines, focus on the ones easiest to certify or the higher margin premium stuff, maybe shift more towards online sales where feasible.
Like Nike closing some stores but staying in the game?
Right. But a complete disappearing act, pulling out entirely. It just doesn't fit their pattern or the sheer size of the Indian opportunity, even with these new hurdles. It would be extraordinary.
Okay, so let's focus on the person listening. If you're out there wanting to buy those shoes, that jersey, what does all this actually mean for you?
Good question. A few things you might notice directly. First, prices. We touched on this.
Likely going up.
It seems probable. If brands face higher costs for compliance, they're likely to pass at least some of that on. That 5,000 t-shirt possibly becoming 6,500, that's the kind of potential increase we're talking about.
So your wallet might feel it.
It might. But remember, the flip side the government is aiming for, better quality. The whole point of the QCOs is ensuring products meet higher standards. So in theory, you pay more, but you get stuff that lasts longer, performs better.
A trade-off then, price versus potential durability.
Potentially. The other thing is availability and choice.
Harder to find things, less variety.
Could be, yeah. Especially at first, and maybe for certain types of products. If brands are prioritizing which factories and lines to certify, some stuff might just not make it to the Indian market. Those super limited edition drops might become even rarer.
And online shopping won't necessarily save you.
Not if the item isn't BIS certified. Retailers like Myntra or Flipkart, they'll also need to ensure the imported goods they sell carry that mark. It's the law now.
Okay, so potentially higher prices, maybe less choice.
Sure.
Any upsides for the consumer?
Well, apart from the potential for better quality, the big one is the rise of local heroes. This could be a huge boost for Indian brands like Shiv Naresh and Zeven.
We mentioned them earlier.
Right. They're well-placed to fill any gaps, offer quality gear, maybe better prices, and stuff that's really designed for Indian conditions and tastes. We could see them become much more prominent.
So maybe fewer swooshes, but more options tailored for India.
That's definitely a possible outcome. And it connects to something people were already talking about, especially in the sneaker community.
What's that?
Well, back in late 2024, there was chatter online about whether global brands were overcharging Indian customers compared to other markets. You know, that feeling of being looted.
Ah, yeah, I've heard that discussion.
So this whole crackdown, the potential for further price hikes due to compliance, it adds a really interesting layer to that whole debate about value and pricing from these global giants in India.
This is clearly about more than just sportswear, isn't it? It plugs into bigger global economic shifts.
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating how this domestic policy intersects with global trade stuff. Like we mentioned, those U.S. tariffs on goods made in places like Vietnam.
Right, where a lot of sportswear is produced.
Exactly. Those tariffs are already making brands nervous and causing them to look at other manufacturing locations.
And India is potentially one of those locations, not just as a place to sell, but a place to make things.
Precisely. There were reports around April 2025 suggesting some brands were seriously looking at shifting production to India. It could help them dodge tariffs elsewhere, plus maybe benefit from lower wages in India.
That could be a big win for India, right? More jobs, investment.
Potentially, yes, but it's not a simple switch. Setting up large-scale manufacturing takes huge investment, navigating local rules beyond just BIS, dealing with infrastructure.
So it's another complex calculation for these brands.
Absolutely. They're being pushed by import regulations in India, potentially pulled by the idea of manufacturing in India, all while juggling tariff wars and other global pressures. It's a really intricate situation.
Okay, let's circle back to those dramatic vanishing headlines from June. Given everything we've discussed, it feels like we need a serious fact check.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
And the key fact is this: zero. There has been no official statement from Nike, Adidas, Puma, any major brand saying they are pulling out of India. None whatsoever.
So the headlines were just wrong, or at least huge exaggerations.
Massively overstated the case. In fact, the evidence points the other way. Like, Adidas signed a big deal with cricketer Rishabh Pant in February 2025.
You don't do that if you're planning to leave in a few months.
Exactly. And those reports from April 2025, they weren't about leaving. They were about exploring India as a potential manufacturing base, building in India, not abandoning it.
That's a fundamental difference.
Huge difference. It got completely lost in the panic. Where did the rumors likely come from? Probably a mix of things. That 18-month ban that ended earlier this year likely played a role in priming the anxiety.
So when the new compliance challenges hit, people jumped to conclusions.
It seems like it. News of the difficulties in getting certified probably leaked from supply chain sources, got amplified, and morphed into these dramatic exit stories, even though imports are technically allowed now, provided they meet the standards.
So the reality is way more complicated than they're packing their bags.
Much, much more complicated.
Mm.
Adaptation, maybe some restructuring, maybe focusing on certain products. Those are the likely paths, not a full-scale retreat.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Looking ahead, what does the future probably hold for India's sportswear market? What are the key takeaways?
All right, synthesizing it all. First, expect the big global brands to adapt. They'll find a way. It'll be tough, maybe costly, maybe slower, but they'll work to comply with the QCOs. Quality will be the focus.
They'll play by the new rules.
Pretty much. Second, watch for the local brands to really compete here. Boom, this is their moment. Expect Indian companies to gain share, build loyalty, offer great products tailored for India.
The rise of the local heroes.
You got it. Third, that potential manufacturing shift. It could actually happen. Global trade pressures might push brands to see India as a viable production hub, bringing investment.
And fourth,
Consumer power. Don't underestimate it. What you choose to buy, whether you pay a premium for certified imports or you embrace local brands, will shape how this all plays out. Your wallet has a vote.
so summing up, India's quality crackdown is a major move. It's definitely put global brands in a tricky spot, forcing them to choose between adapting or potentially scaling back.
Right. The headline screamed, "Exit," created a lot of noise.
Yeah.
But the deeper dive shows a much more complex picture. Adaptation is challenging, sure, but it's far more probable than a complete vanishing act.
So next time you're looking at sneakers online or in a store, remember there's a bigger story there. Global brand or local name, it's part of this whole dance between global trade, national standards, corporate strategy, local industry growth.
And ultimately, the choices available to you, the consumer. It's a market in flux, definitely not just disappearing.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As India pushes for higher quality and bolsters its own brands, will the sportswear market emerge stronger, more resilient, better serving its own people? Or will these hurdles ultimately mean fewer choices and higher prices stick around for the long haul?
That's the big question. And the answer will unfold gradually. One purchase, one certified product, one factory audit at a time.
Until then, keep your laces tied.